Note sheet.
Okay, we have Sandra Queswell today sharing with us about parenting. Sandy is an expert in this field, and I always learn a ton from her when she shares. So take it away, Sandy.
Well, I'd love to. So we have one individual who's joined us, and I guess I'm getting a peek at this person right now. What's your name? Can we hear the people?
Claudette.
Oh, Claude. Oh, there you are, Claudette.
Yes,
Yeah,
hi.
close up works better. Well, I'm glad you came. And
Thank you.
for starters, I have things that I want to share with you. But for starters, is there anything particular that you're hoping to expand your thoughts on that you want us to cover?
Not really. I mean, just interested in the whole program that you're offering today. And if I
Okay.
need to take notes, I will. So they're always very informative. So I appreciate your time as well.
Okay. Well, it's my pleasure. We'll both learn, I'm sure. It's
I'll
always
mute my mic now, so I'm not interfering.
okay.
Thank
So
you.
I'm going to cover a multiple of different concepts because I just want your brain to be thinking along those lines. None of it is in big, scary words or anything. I'm not going to give you big, fancy words, but I hope I give you thoughts that will be new to you. And I will be asking you also if some of these are new considerations for you that you hadn't thought about before. So when we talk about, so how many children do you have in your family? And your audio is gone.
Yeah, sorry. I have 7 kids. Um, so my oldest in 37, and then my youngest is 15. So on the program now, the scholars that are on the program now are 15 and 17.
Oh,
So
okay.
yeah.
Okay. Well, you got you're in a very challenging period in some of those lives, so adolescence, right?
Two teenage boys. So yes, ma'am.
Yes, there you go. Okay, well, so I'm just going to start going through the notes and we'll talk as we go. Please interrupt me if you have a question or something doesn't make sense, or if you'd like to move on to another topic. Oh, we have some other people here. Welcome.
Wonderful. I'll mute my mic.
Yeah. So we are just beginning. You're here in a nick of time. And I think we'll just move on to the content right now. So we've just kind of said hello to each other. The bottom line when it comes to children and their behavior and the challenges that you face with their behavior is kids have to want to change. And so we need to absorb that piece of information so that we realize how we set up opportunities or even requirements for them to change their behavior is very important. I'm going to teach you some things about human behavior that will supplement what we're going to be doing in the rest of the training, which is talking about what you might think might work with your kids, and we'll kind of analyze that together. So one of the things I want you to remember about behavior is that it is never just about an action. It is when you're interacting with your kid, it's never just about an action that they're presenting. It is always about an action. That would be on the part of the kid over you, a reaction from the other person, and then the whole thing together would be the complete action between the two of you. So it's all about an action, a reaction, and an interaction. So when you start thinking about how your kids are driving you nuts or challenging behaviors that they're presenting, I want you not to just look at it through the telescope of what is my kid doing, my child, my adolescent, whomever, what is my kid doing? I want you to look at it through another lens that says, this is about an action, a reaction, and an interaction. So how am I reacting to it? How is our interaction either supporting the continued challenging behavior or leading us to want to look toward another way of communicating to each other? So, and so I'm just going to give you I'm going to give you a little exercise here. So I'm going to ask you to stop talking if you're in there in anyone else's presence. Stop talking for just 1 minute. And I'm going to keep track of the time here. Okay. And I want to, when the 1 minute is over, I want to know how many times. Well, I'm not going to tell you that yet. So what I'm going to tell you is I want you to think about inhaling and exhaling, which is what we do every minute throughout our lives. And it's so automatic, we don't even realize we're doing it. And so I'm going to, for 1 minute, ask you to just think about and count up how many times you're inhaling. And I'll do the same. So how many times did some of you, just hold up your hands, how many times did you inhale or exhale? Do you know? When you've ever experienced inhaling and exhaling, was someone ever able to come up and ask you how many times did you do that? Or did you ever think to yourself, wow, I've been doing this for a minute. How many times have I done it? No. So it's the same thing with how we interact with our kids. We're not always aware of what they're doing and what we're responding with and why we're responding. So again, I want you to remember that this concept about not keeping track of our inhales and exhales also spreads into other patterns of behavior that we're not aware of. And the important part of that is we're not aware of the impact that it's having because we don't even recognize it, okay? Doing things a new way takes practice and energy and hard work, and we often resist these changes because we're so used to doing things the old way. Learning and repeating the new way requires a focused effort on your part until they become a new habit. And remember, you can't change a pattern of behavior unless you recognize it. So we're going to go through some other thoughts, the supporting ideas of the program. Your child's behavior is not beyond your control, although I'm sure there are many days when it feels like it. And we're going to try and open up other possibilities for you to consider so you can see how you do have control. Cooperative behavior and family balance can be achieved by an organized system of parenting. And helping the child to feel empowered actually increases your authority over the child, your parenting control. Success, the way I define it, is giving your child clear messages about the behavior we're expecting. And what you want to do is talk to your child in behavioral terms. You don't want your child to cooperate. What does that mean? On the other hand, you might say, when I ask you to do something, I'd like you to, so for instance, load your dishes into the washer. I'd like you to do that. So you want to give them very specific um, behavioral requests so that they are able to understand exactly what it is that you want. Clean up the kitchen. I don't know what that means. If it's very specific, uh, remove the tablecloth from the table, remove the dishes and put them in the washer, whatever. It will make a big difference in how you are able to effectively communicate with your children. So what this course is all about is being able to communicate more clearly. I'm giving you simple ways to think about that, but of course, you know from your interactions with your kids that it's much more complex than that. Success is giving your child clear messages about the behavior you want, talking to them in behavioral terms. You don't want your child to cooperate. What does cooperate mean? Maybe you want your child to follow your request to go into their room and finish their homework assignment for social studies that they got at school that day. Now, that's a very specific behavioral request, but just to ask them to, in a very general way. Now, some kids, you can ask them to get their homework done. Some kids, you don't even need to ask, but some kids you can ask and they will get it done, but that's not the same across all families. So let's move on. One of the things I want you to remember is if a child cannot learn the way we're teaching, then maybe we should teach the way they learn. And so I'm going to try to give you some ideas that'll help you move along those lines. So the foundation of what my parenting program is about is to say to all of you that today is the first day of the rest of your life. You're human, and you're going to learn as much about yourself as you do about your children. And the more you learn about yourself and your interactions and learn to consider and think about, well, how did I interact? The more successfully you'll be able to impact changes in your interactions with your children. And remember that change is always possible, but it takes time and focus and personal energy to move toward those changes. And I'm going to try to give you some of the tools for that. You're going to learn about irresistible influence, which sets up situations so your child will actually choose to cooperate because he or she will be able to see how they benefit. We're also going to talk about an acronym that I've created, and the acronym is IAM, IAAM, which translates to it's all about me, because young children or even immature adults don't see beyond their own needs, their own wants. And so we want to remember, though, that for kids, we are dealing with, for the most part, people who don't see beyond their own needs, and they just know what they want and what they need. So let's go on. I'm trying to skip some things so we can get through it. Does anyone have any questions at this point or any thoughts that they'd like to share? Just keep going. Okay. We're also going to talk about family scripts. And I don't know if you've ever had the opportunity to just sit back and listen, but it's amazing how we will repeat the same conversations, the positive ones, the challenges, the irritating, they keep coming back at us. And you can't do anything about it if you're not aware of it. So again, I'd love to know from each of you whether you feel that you are aware of it, but I also want you to know that it's happening, whether or not you're aware of it. So you want to look for it. You're going to learn successful techniques. One of them is, instead of just giving your child orders, you could offer your child choices. And so let's say you say to the kid, go clean up your room. Well, actually, go clean up your room could stand some positive changes also, because what does that mean? Do you want the toys picked up and put in the closet? Do you want the laundry that, what does it mean? And you need to be very specific, behavioral specific instructions so that they know exactly what they need to do. I want you to make your bed and put the bedspread back on top of it, or I want you to put your toys in the closet, or, whatever it is. So you want to be very, very specific. And you want to be able to set up outcomes. So let's assume you're struggling now because your kids are not doing what you ask or are not listening to what you ask. So you also want to set up a system where they can earn rewards for changing their behavior. And sometimes you can even, what you can do is ask the kid to participate in that. You can draw the boundaries around it. So for instance, you might say, it might be for a treat that you could certainly enjoy, that you wouldn't normally have been able to enjoy. What would those be? So I can kind of keep those available for these moments so you can celebrate. And you bring the child into the process of planning how that's going to occur. Okay. Do you have any along the way at this point, or challenges that you're facing? Okay. So we're going to go through, there are 3 core needs of every child, 3 basic human needs that have a profound effect on their behavior. And I call it the ABCs of challenging and defiant behavior. So we're talking about attention, a child needing and wanting attention from you, from a sibling, from your spouse, from whoever it is. Basic survival, a place to sleep, food to eat, and every kid does not have a life that's wonderful enough that they can be guaranteed those things. And the other is, so now we're talking about attention, basic survival, and control and power. And that means that within their lives, you will be able to set up for them how they will have specific opportunities to be able to make decisions, and you would give them the groundwork for what those decisions would be about, and you would set up some kind of a description so if you said that you could decide what treat you have after you clean your room, and be sure you've told them exactly what clean your room is, you would not want them to expect a chocolate and vanilla sundae that's got 4 pounds of candy in it or something like that. I mean, you would be very specific as to what that was about. So let's go on. And if there's any questions along the way, please raise your hand. So you also want to remember that every human being, not just your children, but every human being has 2 basic ideas that actually affect their age and how they function. So we have our chronological age based on the year we were born, 40, 50, 63, 12, 8 years old, and we have our developmental age. So very rarely are people matched up perfectly, that if you have an 8-year-old, you might have an 8-year-old who functions in some situations more like a 4-year-old, or a 4-year-old who functions like a 5-year-old or a 2-year-old, or even that 8-year-old. So you want to be sure to understand where your child is at developmentally and chronologically. And their chronological age, but maybe you will benefit from taking a closer look at where they are functioning in terms of their everyday behaviors. Because what you're going to do is you're going to set your expectations, not just based on their chronological age, because if the child is much, let's say, significantly immature in a particular area, let's say you have an 8-year-old child who has some challenges going on at what you might consider to be a 3rd or a 4th year age challenge, then you want to be able to respond to them honoring their age, their chronological age, but respecting where they are at in terms of their developmental age, and giving them a chance to succeed and to be able to celebrate with you what their successes are. Again, if you have any questions or something you don't understand, I don't know if you're even hooked up to be able to talk to me, but you can raise your hand anyway, and I'll at least re-comment on a particular point. So what happens to the training that I've developed is it's based as much on developmental level as it is chronological age. And the chronological age is actually more something that we just are aware of, but we put that in the background, and we look closely at where the child's behaviors and needs are in terms of their developmental levels. And that may be for those of you who are so frustrated because their kids keep repeating the same things, that may be because that's where they're at, and the challenges they face are at a much younger or a much more disorganized developmental level. And you want to be able to meet them at that and start working forward there. So let's just skip ahead a little bit and talk a little bit more about some of the details that you might find successful in your interactions. And one of them is that you want to be sure to avoid contaminated vocabulary. And this is vocabulary that brings up negative feelings. It's very often vocabulary that brings up challenging behaviors, because you're telling the kid, I told you you can't do it, and you better do what I say. And for some of you, that may be very successful, but for others or other children in your household, that may not work at all. And I'm guessing it doesn't work for a large number of you. Anyway, we want to talk about contaminated vocabulary. There are certain words that trigger negative responses. So if you use a word like consequences or timeout or punishment, you're going to trigger a defensive frustration on the part of the kid or anger. And you want to be able to put in any other kind of a word that you might have. You might, outcomes could be one of them. You might say, we have to figure out a solution, but you're going to start, I hope you're going to start listening and thinking about what you say to your kid and how that is affecting their responses and the behavior repeating itself or not. The other thing I want you to know is the most positive thing you want to do is communicate with your child by letting them know what you want in a positive way and what you hope to see.
They can see you.
Excuse me?
I'm so sorry. No, I was telling them that I couldn't switch my phone over.
Okay, I thought you had a question. No, that's fine. The other thing you want to remember is that children are concrete thinkers. They don't think in terms of interactions. They don't think, they think about the here and now, what they want, what they don't like, and usually it's very self-centered. So you have to understand that you're going to need to begin to understand their messages and how they're communicating and consider how you could respond in a way that they might be able to hear you better, because they're more limited. They just haven't had the experiences in the world. Their brain hasn't grown, and they're more limited in their ability to talk on a higher level, to see beyond themselves and their own needs. The other thing is, when you want things from your kid, you want to be able to communicate them positively and in behavioral terms. So do you want your child to be pleasant? I want you to be pleasant, or I want you to behave. I don't know what that means. On the other hand, if you say, when I ask you to do something, I'd like you to respond with, okay, mom, and let me know when you're going to do it. If I've left that part wide open, you tell them specifically what it is you're needing to hear from them so that you're communicating clearly to one another. And please interrupt me if you disagree or if you're not understanding, if I'm not saying something clearly to you. So effective communication occurs when statements are made calmly, positively, in behavioral terms, not, I want you to stop being aggressive. I don't know what that means. If you say, I'd like you to stop throwing your glass cup on the floor when you get mad every time, or I'd like you to stop punching your brother or sister because they're bugging you. You're talking about the physical behavior that's happening, not, I want you to be kinder to your family. What does that mean? You have to give them the very specific behavior you are looking for. And when it's things that you want them to accomplish, if you just make your request and they are not saying, oh, sure, I'll get that done, mom. I'll go back to the boring example of cleaning a room, but oh, sure, mowing the lawn, whatever it is, I'll get that done, mom. You want to be able to talk very specifically and give them opportunities to be successful. So when do you think you would be able to mow the lawn? When do you think that would fit into your schedule? So today's Wednesday, or today, let's say, is Thursday. So by Saturday afternoon, I'd like to see that lawn mowed. And when do you think that would work out for you? And you might even have the child start a little list, mow lawn, and you might even let the child know what kind of a little thank you reward might come along with that. If you had the neighbor kid come over, you'd be paying that kid. So you want to think about what else could you do? Well, let's say you're not in a position where you can be paying for these things because you're glad to get your monthly payment for sleeping, in a rental house, and that's fine too. Then you can do it in other ways. You can do it by spending time on a little special walk with your kid, give them a choice where they'd like to go. You could, there's other ways you can pay them, quote unquote. And you want to remember that to effectively communicate, is number one, to identify the outcomes for the child. So if you choose not to, I asked you about mowing the lawn, and I'd like you to tell me when it's going to happen by dinner time tonight. Let me know. You can have some time to think about it, but when you're going to do it. And what you want to remember is that there should be a connection. If you're feeling frustrated, I wish you'd just let me know when you're going to mow the freaking lawn. You want to be sure to be very honest and open about that. It's frustrating to wait for you each week. How can we do this in a way that will have a positive outcome? And you know what? Let's celebrate that. How could we possibly celebrate that? If you're in the position where you can pay your kid to do the lawn, if you don't already, fine. It might be a special outing or something like that. But you want to also make it worth the kid's while to be able to take these new steps. Remember that resistance, when a child resists something, resistance and failure are not the same thing. So because your child may be experiencing resistance, that doesn't mean that you're failing as a parent or that they're failing. Now, there's another way, which is called embedding instructions. So what you could do is ask the child to do something he likes to do. I'd like you to come and take a taste of these cookies I'm baking, because I think your opinion will help me understand whether, we can give them to the neighbors for their birthday or just whatever the reason is. So you could certainly ask for your child's input. You could ask the child to do something that he likes to do. Let's say he's just so busy at not responding to anything you say. You might just say something that he loves to do and say that as a requested behavior or requested time he's going to spend doing it, and let him know when he's done you'd like him to, and think of something that he usually resists doing and see if he'll do that, and then figure out what you could do when those two things are done. Let him know that when the second thing is done, he can, and that might be something that he loves to do. And you know your kids, so that would be important for you to kind of think about. So what you want to do, remember too, is how honoring the child has amazing results. So for about 20 years, I cared for foster children in my home. And the foster children I cared for were children for whom no other placements had been successful. They had moved from a lot of placements. But the winner of all those, who is a young man now who is still in touch with me, but the winner for those came to me at the age of 5, having been in 10 placements in 2 years before he was, because he was driving people nuts, and they would terminate the placement. And he just about grew up in my home because, again, understanding what the behavior's about and what you can do to make it worthwhile for the child to be able to move toward a solution to it makes a huge difference. Does any of this make sense? Does it any questions or any concerns or something that sounds like it doesn't make sense? I'd be glad for you to speak up. And how long are we here to chat? It's 1 o'clock. How long do you know you're supposed to stay?
We have till 1:45.
Okay. So honoring the child has amazing results. You can thank him for trying or doing part of the task. Let's say he didn't get it halfway done. You can choose to cause an argument over the halfway done, or you could choose to let him know how great it is that he's working on it and he's gotten it halfway done, and you're looking forward to him finishing it before dinner time, or you could set a boundary there. You want to thank him for accomplishing the task once it's done. If he's got an idea on something, for having an idea, or even let's say it's an idea that you think is no way going to happen, for sharing his idea with you. You want to thank him for telling you how he felt calmly and respectfully. And when he follows directions, when he has been able to maintain control over himself, either when he's frustrated or angry or whatever. These would all be different situations. And perhaps that he might regain control after he's lost it. Wow, that's awesome. If he could bring himself to be able to regain control again, that's worthy of very much of a thank you. Admitting a lie or something that he has done to manipulate. And you want to catch the child doing the right things for sure, and be sure to draw attention to those too. But you can also take the things that aren't working and wait for that one break in the negative stuff they're doing and say, wow, that was a peaceful few minutes we had together. And the other thing is that another technique that I'll encourage you to use is called marveling. And it might be, you might just sit back and say, how did you do that? You were so upset a minute ago, and now you're calmly talking about and telling me what you're going to do this afternoon. Good for you. So you try to pull the best out of those episodes that are frustrating and challenging and comment on those and see how it affects your kids. I think you'll find it has a very positive outcome for you. Remember, this isn't rocket science, and you don't have to be Albert Einstein to be able to be an expert on parenting. Resistance and failure are not the same thing. And you also want to remember that if you feel that your discussion with your kid is now turning into frustration, moving toward an argument, you can just simply stop the conversation or let the kid know that I think we're both having a lot of big feelings now, so we're going to put this conversation aside and we'll talk about it another time. Remember that effective communication requires a connection between what you feel and what you say. So if you think you're going to say to your kid, no, I'm not mad. No, I'm not frustrated. He's going to be able to read your behavior, and it could be much more subtle than slamming your fist on the table or yelling at the kid. So you want to understand that your kid is in a lot more control of what's happening than you're giving him or her credit for. And remember that effective communication requires a connection between what you feel and what you say. Always identify the outcomes for the child when you do make requests of them, how you're going to celebrate, and if they choose not to do it, what's going to have to wait until it gets done, whether it's TV time, whatever it is. Remember that behaviors have outcomes. All behaviors have outcomes. So should you protect your child from unhappy or negative outcomes? What are you doing? You're just encouraging them to continue those behaviors. So they need to feel what that's about. It is amazing that firm and clear boundaries that you set will absolutely set you and the child free. It's amazing when it happens. Stick with it. I guarantee you it will. So now what I call the kiss of death is intermittent reinforcement. Intermittent reinforcement is giving the child lack of consistency in responses that you have to their behaviors. So, and also constantly focusing on the negative behaviors just because they're so frustrating and aggravating. So what you want to remember is to focus on the replacement behaviors, not what the child has done wrong. And you also want to remember that if you feel it's constantly repeated, and certainly within your child's ability to do something different, you want to remember that you set up a conversation where the kid knows exactly what the outcomes will be for the choices he or she makes. And you can let them know that you're going to start that and you decide when. We have tonight to think about it and ask questions, and it'll start tomorrow when we all wake up in the morning. Anybody have any questions or any discussion that they want to have? Okay, well, the good news is I don't see anyone sleeping. So you're all listening and you're all awake at least. Okay. So another thing you want to do is be very proactive. You want to be very aware of what's going on between you and your kid, and you don't want to wait till it has to be to the reactive stage. If you see early signs of something, you want to do something about it right away, whether you set your kid up with some positive rewards he or she could get for whatever your expectation is, or whether he or she would know that this, or this is going to be removed from their play space unless their behavior is more cooperative, whatever it is, you can let them know in advance. I think that's very fair. The other thing that you want to remember is that sometimes there are even children who are thinking things like, how can I feel safe if you can't control me? Now, they don't have those big complex thoughts, but they're feeling like, it doesn't feel safe in my home. How do I know who's in charge if I can bully you? If your kid can get away with things all the time, how does he know who's in charge? It sounds like he's in control, he or she. How do I know that you even know I'm here, that you're focusing on me? And what do I need to do to know that you will keep me safe? So do you remember what are the three basic reasons for challenging and defiant behavior? It's the ABCs: attention, basic survival, and control and power. And those are the three unmet needs that the child will experience and try to take care of by the bully behavior that you're dealing with, whatever it is. Them being rude and not cooperating with you, or again, with siblings, problems at school, whatever it is. So remember that the closer you get to addressing the child's needs at his or her developmental level, you may have a 14-year-old kid who developmentally is in the 8, 9, 10 range regarding some of his or her needs. And so you want to be sure that the closer you get to attending the child's needs at his or her developmental level in his or her language, and I don't mean if they speak French, I'm talking about the words that they use, and you want to talk about it in a behavioral way, what behavior is exhibited when these challenges arise from feelings that are upset about something. And you want to use a calm voice with a calm attitude and offer choices, stating outcomes very clearly. And the outcomes would be what they will have to deal with if their behavior continues. So, and you also want to show the child how he or she will benefit by making those changes, what rewards, what will be better in their lives. And the closer you get to all of that is the closer you get to positive incomes. Oh, positive income, sorry. That'd be nice. Positive outcomes with your child. So here's a new rule. Adults have the right and the responsibility to set clearly defined boundaries and expectations from their children. And you can avoid a bigger headache. Encourage the child to continue the behavior when he refuses to stop. That's an amazingly powerful thing. So let's say he's, I don't know, kicking some of the stones on the driveway that are there because that's the way your driveway is designed. And you might ask him not to, and he's just going to say, no, I'm going to continue to do it. And you might say, wow, I just want you to know, Joe, that you'll be doing the cleanup for this, but how far do you think you could kick that rock? And, you could just start coming alongside him and letting him know exactly what's going to happen. And by the way, if this continues and you continue to refuse to do what I've asked and stop kicking them, I just want you to know that there won't be TV time or phone access. You won't be able to use the phone until that's all put back. So it's your decision. And actually, you speak to them just that calmly. Now, how can you avoid? I'm sure if some of you have more than one child, then the question of how do you take care of these accusations? I didn't do it, she did it, or no, he did it, not me, it's not my fault. And you want to be able to avoid those he did it, she did it conflicts. And the way you can do that is letting the kids know, well, since I'm not sure and neither of you are stepping up to the plate and owning what happened and the behavior that you had that made it happen, then I guess, sad to say, we're all going to have to sit down and just have quiet time at home here with the TV off. But I'm hoping that one of you will own what happened and be able to step forward. And I have a feeling that I might even have a surprise for the person who's strong enough and tough enough to be able to do that, to honestly say what had happened. So I also want you to remember the definition of a happy family, because no doubt every one of you compares yourself to somebody, and they always seem to be doing better with their kids, and maybe they've got the fancier car, and maybe they dress differently, and they look so smashingly wonderful all the time. So remember the definition of a happy family, and their kids, every time you see them, their kids are always cooperating and being gentle and having fun with the parents. So here is the definition of a happy family. It's a family you don't know very well, because if you knew them better, you would also know more about the challenges they face, because we're all human beings and nobody's perfect. And I want you to remember that if ever you have compared yourself to this seemingly wonderful family and you've lost your position as possibly being a better parent. Okay, so let's summarize. The closer you get to addressing the child's needs from his or her viewpoint in his or her language, although you can feel very free to let them know that what it's the impact is having on the rest of the family is not okay, or on you or on whoever it is. But you're going to talk to them from their viewpoint, using their language in a behavioral way. You're going to talk about their behavior, have a calm voice and attitude. You're going to offer choices, state outcomes, and show the child how he or she can benefit, and absolutely avoid power struggles. The closer you're going to get to positive outcomes. So give it a try and see what happens. And feel free. I sent you all have my email in the email that Parents Challenge sent to you. Or it was in the letter that I had sent to them. Or feel free to get in touch with me. And my email address is skwessel@hotmail.com. Now, the other thing you want to remember is body language, because body language speaks volumes. No, I'm not mad at you. No, I'm not mad at you. So body language has a lot to do with it. And remember that how you communicate affects the messages you communicate. Okay? And I also want you to remember once again the definition of a happy family. Because no doubt, if you're struggling with this, that, or the other in your parenting or in family issues, you're feeling like there are a lot of very happy families and you failed at that. Well, I want you to remember this definition, and if you have to, please write it down so you will. A happy family is a family you don't know very well. Because if you knew them better, you'd realize the struggles they're experiencing, you'd realize the failures they're dealing with, and all the challenges they face, okay? So please remember. Any questions, or just keep going? And what do we say is the timeout for this? When are we done? Somebody's, I
What
don't know.
1:45 is our ending time. Yeah, go ahead, Aisha. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say we actually have several questions in the chat.
Okay, help me
So
out.
the most recent one is, did you identify how to discover the child's developmental stage versus the age level?
So you don't have to be a child growth expert to do these things. If to be able to tell the difference between where your child is functioning and what would be typical, you could certainly draw upon what you're observing compared that child compared to his or her peers, playmates in the neighborhood, whatever, or perhaps whatever is going on at school and how the work is being accomplished there and what the outcomes of those finished worksheets are or workbooks. So I would say you would go to the people who could best supply it. I might go to the school and just say, I'd like some time to have a conference with, Mr. or Mrs. So-and-so, and just kind of get caught up on where my kid's going. You don't even have to indicate I'm worried about my kid, because now you're opening up another possibility to get that person to think about, ooh, something's not right with that kid. Not necessarily. So just say, I'm just interested in kind of getting caught up on where Joey or Susie is at, and how do they do when kids go out to the playground, and how do they do in the different subjects here at school. Yeah, I think I'd be impressed if I was a teacher and someone called up and said, I'd like to catch up a little bit with how things are going. So I would definitely feel very comfortable calling and asking for us to get an appointment time to come and meet with the teacher.
Okay. And then another question is, can you give examples of embedded instructions?
So when we're talking about embedding instructions, we're talking about saying them, first of all, behaviorally. You don't want your child to you don't want your child to be a good kid. I don't know what that means. You don't want your child, but if some of the challenges your child is facing have behaviors that are attached to it, you want to see, so what you would write down in your list would be, you would like Johnny to whatever, hang up his clothes when he's done wearing them, rather than throw them inside his closet or leave them on the floor of his room. So what was the question again? Restate it, please.
Can you give examples of embedded instructions?
So the embedded instructions would just be instructions that are, number one, behavioral, because nobody has, X-ray machine to go in and guess that they've been able to identify what else is going on. There may be other things, and you may want to talk with the child or whatever and see what it is that their response is. But for the most part, I think that just being straight up and straight honest with them, and if they're like a teacher at school, and I wouldn't want to go to talk to that teacher to say that, to trigger something in the teacher that says, better watch Joey, he's, got some problems at home or something like that. I just say, Joey's been in school for 3 months now, and I just like to get caught up. How's he doing? And that kind of a thing. Anything else, though, that you're feeling hasn't been addressed?
I'll let Hillary let you know if she got what she needed out of it, but I do have a couple more questions afterwards.
All right, what are they?
How can we determine whether or not we're communicating with our kids at the right behavioral level? Just whether or not they are responding the way we're hoping for.
That's the best measure of all, is, are you getting the response that you are hoping for? And there could be different reasons that you are not. It might be that the kid is not understanding what you're asking, and then you need to self-examine. Well, am I asking too much? Am I saying that I'll be watching and measuring this behavior for too long? You want to build the positives into that also. Now, I'm going to tell you about something. And so the training that I have is a 6-week training. And, the hope is that perhaps in the future, your agency will take it on again, but we'll see. You know, with COVID and everything else, things just kind of began to shrink back. But we talk about looking very specifically at the behaviors that you want to change. You know, you want your child to be more respectful. I don't know what that means. What behaviors would you need to see that would satisfy the need for your child to be respectful? Okay, so number one, you want to be able to turn your requests or things that you're measuring into things, behaviors that you're observing that will give you a more accurate feedback about what it is that you're concerned about or celebrating, one of the two. Does that help at all, or is there anything else with the question? Where'd my person go?
That's me, but it was Kelsey who asked that, so I don't know if she got the answer that she needed, but I want to give her space to speak.
Yep, that answers my question. Thank you.
And the other thing that you want to do is be honest about how you're feeling, because guess what? Your child knows. Kids are, as we become more and more sophisticated, as we grow up and just have more complicated things going on in our lives, kids are absolutely masters at reading the people in their lives and how those people are responding to them. So if they're frustrated and they know ways to piss you off, you better believe that they know ways to piss you off. On the other hand, and does that mean you've got this evil kid who sits in his, bedroom with the door closed and makes lists of how he's going to drive you nuts? No, it's a spontaneous kind of a thing, but they learn. And as parents who are sitting there, are your kids doing things that just seem to be intentionally disrespectful and not cooperative? If you're not, congratulations. But if you are, a lot of that can also be intentional on the child's part, because again, it's all about an action, a reaction, and an interaction. So there's an action on somebody's part, the parent, the child, whatever, and then there's a reaction on the other person's part, and the child or the parent, and then the interaction that becomes established between the two of them. So you want to be sure that, and the reason this model is so important is because if you start looking for, well, what was the action here? What kicked this off? And oh, I remember it was my daughter did blah, blah, and blah, and it made me mad. And so then we get to the reaction. Oh, well, how did I respond to that? And the interaction. And what did that lead to between my child and I? So you want to just be able to step away from the behaviors and be able to use a little system like that to help you kind of step back and see what happened. And then the last question that would go along with that is, what can I do differently? Because you can't control your other person's behavior. What you can do is set up situations that they will want to do that behavior because of how they will benefit, particularly children. And benefit could be maybe nothing more than a warm congratulations on the part of the parent. It might be, gosh, you know what? I know you love it when I make pigtails in your hair. I'd be glad to do that again. You've just been so helpful. I will definitely make time to do that. And when would you like to do it? Then you empower your child a little bit with that. What color ribbons would you like in your hair? That kind of a thing. Does that help, or do you want to re-examine it again? I think I put him to sleep. Did someone fall asleep, or is it okay?
Oh, no, it's okay. I just wanted to give space to the person who asked that. And I have one more question in the chat. How do you handle disrespectful talk from a preteen? I think we're doing a good job with clear, specific instructions, offering choices, mostly remaining calm, but wondering what advice you have for helping a preteen interact more respectfully with her other family members.
what is the definition of other family members?
Okay, so that was me that asked that. Siblings, parents, just everybody. I feel like she's a really great kid, but I feel like disrespect is kind of the main relational friction we have with her. So kind of wondering, yeah, we're not really struggling with like getting her to do homework or getting her to do chores. Our main issue is just relationally. It seems like she just is constantly at odds with everybody.
And what is occurring that you know she's at odds? What behavior is leading you to know she's at odds?
Like eye rolling, huffing,
Okay.
or like getting riled up or escalated when we say, clear, specific instructions of, can you please do your math homework before dinner, or just very, I don't know. So we're not having issues necessarily behaviorally outside of just being very disrespectful and kind of curious. To me, this is really like helpful for our younger in getting him to do things more specifically, but for her, I'm just like, ooh, how do we handle that attitude?
And how old is she?
11.
Okay, so still fairly young. Sometimes the most productive thing you can do is empower the child. So I would probably sit down, if you and your husband have thought about and considered and re-examined and haven't been able to come up with any possibilities to motivate her to change irritating behaviors or disrespectful behaviors, you might just sit down with her and say, Dad and I, and if your husband will sit with you, that'd be great. We have some things that keep happening, behaviors that you're doing that keep repeating, and we're just wondering if maybe, and we've done what we thought might be helpful for those behaviors to disappear, and that hasn't happened. So we thought maybe we'd get together as a group and figure it out. Now, I'm going to tell you about a wonderful tool that I learned actually during the years of foster care. And my kids all had point sheets. And they were just simply 8.5 by 11 sheets of paper. And what I did is I put some expectations on those sheets, and they were behavioral. You can't ask a child to be sweet. I don't know what that means. You can't say you want your child respectful. I don't know what that means. But if your child were respectful, what behavior would you be able to say, oh, that's more respectful? And so what you put on these point sheets, I used to have point sheets that were the size of an 8.5 by 11 sheet, one per day in a notebook. And it was a notebook of point sheets. And I would list items. Here, behaviors here, whatever the behaviors were, and you could start very small and build your sophistication with using it and increase the size of it. But the child would, if the child is young enough, the child would be with you evaluating the sheet, and you could list on that sheet what behaviors you would like to see changed and what would you like it to look like. So you don't want your child to stop picking his nose or stop swearing at you. You would want something that the replacement behavior, what would you prefer in its place? And that's what the point sheet would be all about. It would be a list of replacement behaviors, okay? And then there was always some money that was associated with that. And it doesn't have to be money. It could be specific, wonderful things that the kid would really enjoy. The kid could earn. So what would happen is there would be a list of the behaviors here. If I'd have known what was going to come up today, I should have had a sample one with me. And I might actually, I'll look in a minute, but the behaviors here, and then over here would be, a check off. So the kid would fill in. Every child who I had would have a point sheet that would list behaviors that were requested. And the child knew, and the child could add up the points. Now, so the child would fill in the point sheet, and then I would go after dinner at the end of the day, and I would go through it with them, and we would, and if there were things I disagreed with, I'd be very demonstrative about saying, wow, I'm glad you noticed that because I did too. You are doing so well with, whatever it is the kid's doing better now. But there might be others where you say, well, I think you're headed in that direction, but I'm not really seeing it. And this is the behavior that I would like to see. Let's put that on the point sheet that would tell me that you really do have that skill now, whether it's, I don't know what it would be. Being nice to his little brother, what does nice mean? But, or coming to you if he had challenges rather than pushing his little brother down, whatever was the challenge. But point sheets are exceptionally positive. And eventually we would just have the kid would have little notebooks of these things, and we would just keep them together. And every night, the kids who were in my house, my foster kids, and if I'd had this concept earlier, I would have done it with my own family. I just didn't have it when I raised my kids. I didn't think about it. But anyway, it's a very powerful thing. And you could start with just 2 or 3 items on it. And it's not a punishment if the kid didn't do it. It's just simply, well, there's, you decide if you're in a position where you could put some coins, whether each thing that they earn could be worth 10 cents. So let's say there's 10 items on there. It might be $1 they've earned that day. Now, they don't get it because they entered it on their point sheet. You have to agree that that in fact is what happened and that you are willing to pay for it. If instead of saying, no, I'm sorry, you didn't do it that way, if instead of saying that, you were able to pick one small positive out of that and say, the one thing I did see you do though was this. So maybe you could put the whole thing together and tomorrow you would be able to earn some coins on your point sheet for having done it, whatever it is, walk the dog or, I don't know what it would be. But anyway, it's a very powerful tool. And if you want to know more about the point sheets, actually, and we're having a new printing done and things are being rearranged. Let me see if I can't find one though. This is the course workbook for, so I created a parent training. This is the course workbook. This is the parenting book. And then there's a trainer manual also. Let me see if I can't find this example of a point sheet. Actually, I also created one which was a parent point sheet for and there's also one for a teen point sheet versus one for an older child point sheet. And it might have on it things like, well, it's divided in activities on one side, and there's a $sign here. I don't know if you can see it, a $sign here. And some of the items were worth 5 cents, a quarter, 10 cents, whatever it was. And then a place to put a plus sign if it was completed. So that's kind of what they look like. I'll show you for a younger child. And so what would happen is the child would have to do one after dinner, and it wasn't anything even to argue about. You could decide TV is available or, whatever it is that the kid likes to do, that's available after you complete your point sheet. If the child still refuses, I wouldn't make it, turn that into another opportunity to be angry at each other. I might just say, well, I hope tomorrow night you get it done. And maybe we'll put that on your point sheet, that's one of the items that you cooperate with getting your point sheet done each night. And that's or tonight, because he's going to do a different point sheet every night. I'm just looking to see. For a younger child, it's in here. I just have to find it. I think Deborah Hendricks probably still has. Let's see. Yeah, these are for the older kids. Of course, I'm just skipping over the page that's for the younger kids. But it could be whatever you list in it. It could be brush his teeth before going to school. It could be, I mean, you would decide, puts his dirty laundry in the laundry basket, pats the dog and says good morning to him, you know, whatever. I mean, you can decide. I wouldn't make them all really hard items. Let there be a few easy passes in between that are actual. Don't pull it apart because it's not actual. But if there's something that's a little less, you know, a little easier for the kid, cleared his cereal bowl when he finished he or she finished breakfast or something like that. I can certainly, yeah, I don't know. I'd have to find them. I can't waste any more time now though, but does that make sense? You can kind of create your own point sheet. So just basically it has the name of the activity. Well, here's a parent point sheet. Which was not, I don't know if anybody's going to give you treats for it. But anyway, here's one, even a parent point sheet. And so number one was, I remember the 3 important needs that cause challenging behavior. What are they? I call them the ABCs of challenging and defiant behavior. Attention, we mentioned, basic survival. B and C is control and power. I'm going to try really hard to remember that challenging behavior is a coping mechanism in response to at least one of those needs. I mean, there are items that become goals for you. We are in the process of moving toward the next level of growth in the pillars for success. And Deborah, way back when, did ask for me to get her some other. You can also get them online. And what's the online that has a million kinds of books? You could also look for those. Pillars for Success is the name of the train.
Amazon.
Amazon. You can buy them online, I'm sure. But if not, ask Deborah, and maybe she could purchase some too. I have a feeling she would be willing to support you, but that's my guess. So what we have there, and also because I've never met a frustrated parent who wanted to read a 200 or 150 page book. So you see the size of this book, and it's just loaded with understanding about why kids what they do what they do, and some of the responses that you can have. So I don't know whose question I was supposed to answer, but I did get off task. Sorry.
Oh, I just wanted to let you know, Sandy, that there's about 5 more minutes left in the session. And so there aren't any other questions in the chat, but I didn't know if you had any final notes that you wanted to cover.
Yeah, there is. I think.
But
I'm sorry. I'm interrupting. Never mind. Sorry.
Yeah, no problem. But I was just wondering, and maybe this is a question to ask Deborah since you're the leader of the session, but maybe if you would be willing to let her have copies of the chapters that we're addressing over these lunch and learns,
Copies of what?
copies of the chapters that we're covering during the lunch and learns, and then maybe she could send it out to everybody who registered. That way we're able to reference the material that you are mentioning in this session. Uh-oh, you're muted. We can't hear you. I'm sorry, ma'am. Oh, you're muted, Sandy. Yeah, do you know how to take yourself off mute? Let me see if I can.
Sandy, if you can click your microphone, there should be a picture of a microphone that says audio, and right now it has a red line through it. If you can click that, it'll take the red line off.
How about
There you go.
that? Can we talk?
Yes, perfect. Yes. Okay, so we missed all that. So if you wouldn't mind repeating, that would be great. Thank you.
Yeah, so the only thing I'm saying is, I'll go ahead and restate the concern to me one more time.
Oh, well, I just wanted to let you know that you have about 5 more minutes for this session. But the question I was going to ask you is the chapters that you are referencing, in this session. Would you, is it possible for you to give those chapters to Deborah so that we can reference them after the session?
I
And then
think,
she can email them to us.
I think the most useful thing, and it's not about me selling the books. I'll donate the darn things, and Deborah, I'm sure, knows that. But because we knew that there were new books being worked on, I think at this point, I don't have a very good stock of these. You can ask Deborah if she has any, and ask Deborah to get in touch with me about reordering more. And
Oh,
if that
okay, thank you.
agency, so you could have them, I'd be glad to do that. And the other, I understand the session time is over, but unless you guys hit the off button, I also want to let you know about the power of choices. So instead of just giving your kid orders about this, that, or the other, you might, and maybe it's something like, I don't know what to get the lawn mowed. You might say, so when do you think that would work for you? Today's Tuesday. Would you be able to do it on Wednesday? Do you want to wait till the weekend? Do you see what you're doing? You're empowering the child. But you haven't given up on your request or the significance of it. You're just understanding that you're not getting anywhere arguing with them over it now. So you're going to get some flexibility, give him a little bit of power about when it's going to get done within the next, 2 days, 3 days, whatever it is. And so that's another thing that's very powerful with the kid, is giving them choices. And none of the choices are meant to go beyond or erase the significance of your request. It's that the kid's got his heels right against the wall and is kind of saying, the hell, I'm going to get that done. And so you can say, well, how about this? You know your schedule. When do you think might be a good time? I'd like it done by, let's say you're talking on Monday, I'd like it done by Wednesday. When do you think would be a day that would work for you, after school or whatever? So you could empower the child that way. So in terms of embedding instructions, so choices are very powerful. You'll hopefully be happily surprised at how well that works. Because again, what are the basic needs? Attention and power and control is one of them. It's the ABCs of challenging and defiant behavior: attention, basic survival, and control and power. So whenever you can hold on to the significance of what you're asking the kid to do, and if he's giving you a hard time about it, being able to pass along to him some responsibility to be able to decide how and when it gets done. Or you could just, dig your heels in the ground and have an ongoing fight with the kid. Now, some things, it's worth it. And if you know your kid is doing that time and time again, you might even say to them, I'm trying to be fair and have you be part of the decisions here, but every time we're having an argument about it. And so that's not making me want to continue this. How are we going to solve this? And see if you can't come up with a solution with the kid and say, so either we're going to figure something out or I will. And you won't be able to have had a part in the decision. So you can either be part of making the decision that we can both agree to, or I'll do it myself. And that might be, what's he going to lose? He or she is going to lose by not doing what you asked by a certain time. Is that going to be the wonderful dessert that everybody else gets? And by the way, if it's something like that at dinner, you might look at the kid and you might let him know, I'm so sad that this apple pie isn't gonna be available to you, but I told you in advance, and don't ever hit them with it in the last minute. I told you in advance, and this was your choice. So you still get dessert, but your dessert is going to be yogurt, and the rest of it, whatever it is. I mean, it doesn't matter. You just need to pick something that's fair and that has some significance. Okay. So I'm a couple more things, and then I promise I will stop talking. So here's an example of embedding instructions. You're going to ask the child to do something that he likes. you're letting him know that when he's done, you'd like him to something he usually resists. And you're going to inform him that once the second request, that's the one he usually resists, is completed, he can, and you let him know what great thing he can have or do after he does that one. And then at the end of that, you're going to thank him for being so helpful. You're going to help him get over those, some of these things are not just, it's not correctly defined that your kid is being destructive. It's him needing to these same qualities that we're talking about, to feel that he or she is in charge of their own lives. And you're just trying to let them know there's outcomes for things. I mean, if I'm in charge of my own life and I have to get to, to the grocery store faster because I'm in a hurry to get there, and the cop gets me, and now I've got a speeding ticket. I mean, is the cop going to care whether I thought, that maybe there'd be no more eggs left if I waited too long to get there? No, it doesn't, And so some of their stuff isn't going to make sense. And if it doesn't make sense, don't honor it. But you can try. So embedding instructions, here's another. You ask the child to do something he likes and let him know when he's done you'd like him to, which might be asking him to do something that you've been having some struggles with, because he's refusing or not doing it. And then you inform him that once the second request is completed, he can, what? I don't know. He can watch TV because he hasn't been able to. That'll be a big deal. You decide what he can now do, what he can now have, he or she. And then you thank the child for being so helpful. Another word here, don't make your child share things that belong to them. If the child refuses to stop a negative behavior, encourage the child to repeat the undecided behavior until he refuses to do what you ask. So if the kid is, let's say he keeps spitting milk, you could say, well, I'm going to hold your milk cup for now, but the only way that you're going to be able to watch TV tonight is if you do 10 more spits, or maybe 10's not enough. 20 more spits. And everybody else is going in and watch TV, but you're going to have to stay here with me until you can get those done. And you can spit them in the sink, and then you'll have to rinse out the sink. So if you're having multiple challenges with seemingly ridiculous behaviors, and if you're a parent, I can't believe you don't see one or two ridiculous behaviors occurring, because I sure did when I was raising my kids, then, but you can kind of meet them at that level. And then congratulate him at the end. Good job. I'm sorry you missed half the show, or sorry you missed, the kids playing outside, because everybody's gone in now, but that's your decision. There are
Miss
things
Sandy, this is so much helpful information, and I know we could learn from you for so much longer, but we do have to honor everybody's time.
okay.
So I'm going to go ahead and stop you there, if that's okay.
I'm so glad you did.
Thank you. Thank you. That was amazing. I'm going to stop the recording.
Okay.